This event we do as a gathering of the community. We show and share techniques and challenges and experiences. And this is an all skill levels welcome. We go from no code to pro code, everywhere in between. The past episodes are recorded, so you can see those on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantainapp. Make sure you subscribe. We run a pretty simple agenda. We say hello, and then we'll do first call, find out what's going on. Anybody that has anything important that we deal with first, urgency. And then we'll talk about contributions to our joint Campfire website, and any feature request, anything you submit in advance. After an hour or so, we usually switch to an afterglow segment where we turn the recording off and raise a virtual hot toddy. Please engage with us. You can jump in, turn on your mic, show and tell, use the chat window, but this is all about engaging. Very few guidelines, but if you've got noise going on behind you, please mute and be nice. You can submit questions and topics in advance using this QR code or a link that you'll find in the emails that we send to you. With that, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy Friday.
Good morning.
Indeed. Good morning.
And here I say good morning.
Wow.
It shows the US-centric nature of my outlook. Hello to all. So, anybody have something for first call?
I have a quick question if anyone can come up with an idea. I know there's a way, I can't even remember the token call for it, where you can obtain the current IP address of the person's browser. But does anyone know if there is a way, and if anyone knows that token code, just please remind me, put it in the chat.
User colon ID, excuse me, IP, user colon IP.
User colon IP gets the browser's IP address?
Yep.
Oh, cool, thank you. The other thing is that the name of the computer of the user. Because I think what you had posted, Dale, I think that gets me the name of the server, the host PC. But what I'm looking for is the actual client, because what I want to see if the client that is browsing matches the host. Are you browsing from the host machine, from the same server, or are you remote? That's what I'm trying to determine. It would be easier to use the host name because I can pull the host name out of the data tables already from DNN. They store it in the web servers table. So I know what the host name is, or the machine name. I just want to compare that to the client. Unfortunately, nowhere does it save the IP address of the host machine that I've found, unless someone knows where that is hiding. So the IP address, if I use that, I would have to hard code it. And I'd rather avoid hard coding if possible.
Yes, I didn't understand the question you asked on the community forum and went a different way, talking about the name of the server. And so I don't anyone jumping in with that. Another possibility, although you'd have to make some kind of steps to register it, would be to use the device fingerprint.
Yeah, but that would get me a unique well, hopefully a unique fingerprint for the device, but then like you said, I I would basically have to run that locally on the server and store that somewhere. Like it's not something that is readily available that I can either generate or pull on the fly. That's already there.
Mhm.
So I would have to generate the server's version of a fingerprint and store that somewhere. So that then I can compare it to the fingerprint of whoever's on the browser at that moment to see if they match.
Right.
Which at that point is, it's probably easier just hard coding the IP address. Jim writes to run a PowerShell command on the server to get the host, excuse me, using the host name to get the server IP. I don't know the first thing about PowerShell. I will, that's where my limit hits. So I wouldn't even have the foggiest idea how to approach that.
Ben, there is a server variable named remote host, if I well remember. Remote host from my old ASP.NET.
Oh, from you mean the token?
No, not a token. It's a server variable collection from ASP.NET.
Server variable.
I think you can obtain by ResoScript.
Yeah, I don't know what variable that is or how to achieve it. I know there's a server variables token in my tokens, but there's no documentation as to what the sub keys that are available are.
But with a ResoScript, you can access to context HTTP context, current server variable, and so on. I'm trying to find the current syntax.
I think the server vars token accesses the server variables collection directly if we just do which key it was that would return us the IP.
That's what I was looking, but
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have a list of what the
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know.
what the keys are.
I was thinking the same thing, and aren't the keys standard .NET keys? So from a documentation standpoint, wouldn't that be kind of a Microsoft lookup?
I see, well, I just ended up at w3schools.com really quick. I see remote underscore host. I'm gonna
Yes.
try that.
Yes.
Is this where we are, HTTP context items?
No, I was looking at server vars.
Hmm.
I did that and it returned the local IP for me.
Yep. I got an IP address. Now the question is that my IP address? Let me just double check.
You don't know that off the top of your head, Ben? Seriously?
Should have a t-shirt that has that. What was the variable that you end up using?
Server vars colon remote underscore host.
Remote underscore host. Yeah.
Let's see.
No, the IP. Host
think
name,
that-
remote host name, for maybe. In a Stack Overflow page, I find suggest that reverse DNS query AP to the name. I think the not is not past the client name. If the name is not mapped on DNS, I think you cannot obtain it.
So if server var's remote host is the IP of the host, wouldn't comparing that to user IP tell you whether or not you're on the host?
Potentially, if that is returning the correct host IP. Let me just double check here. So, which of course, in my case, it's not. Believe it or not, that remote host, I believe, is returning the IP address of our firewall.
Yeah, when I run the same thing you did, Dale, server vars, then the user IP, I come back with the same value, even though my instance I'm using is the second variable is correct. It's my local IP, but the first one is not my remote IP address.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I'm probably going to be stuck hard coding the IP and comparing to that. I don't at this point don't think there's going to be a programmatic way to
Remote host.
grab this information.
Sorry, I was late to this. Do you need the server IP or the user IP?
Both. The user IP is easy, but
Okay, the server IP.
yeah.
Oh, you got server name? Let me try. Hold on. Let's see what-
Especially if you live behind the firewalls or load balancers, it's very difficult to get. I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because yeah,
There might
server
be-
name gives me the domain.
It might be that you might have some HTTP headers, so the load balancer or servers in front might put some HTTP headers in the request. So I'm not sure if that could be in some situations.
Our firewall has caused me so much aggravation and issues because there's a lot of stuff that normally could be done, but because it's running through that firewall load balancer, it modifies information and then, you know, the original is lost. So I don't have access to it. This seems to be one of those cases because remote host is returning to me the firewall IP. When I use the server name, it's just returning to me the domain rather than the actual server. So I think I'm pretty much up a creek on this one. Well, thanks for trying.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Matt, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Thank you. My technical prowess on full display. So nitpicky one in the Trumbowyg, if I'm saying that correctly, editor, when you say copy and paste plain text, it always wants to wrap it in a paragraph tag, which for normal circumstances is fine. However, it's doing some, because of this, where I'm using it and the styling that I'm using, it's doing some strange things. Is there any way to simply defeat that paragraph tag in the editor? Did we just lose our host?
I think maybe we did.
Yeah.
Yep, he's gone.
That
Matt,
that question really upset him.
I know.
Yeah.
I
he's
think
like,
it's
"That's
just
it.
me.
I'm gone." Is this something that you're looking to paste just straight text, or are you looking to paste it with whatever existing formatting it has?
Nope, straight text.
So I think at that point you have, well, the first option that I could think of is in the Trumbowyg, if you have it available, jump to source and paste it in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it when I do that, and I have played around with this quite a bit, is it still puts the paragraph tag back in.
And when you save,
Okay, so in an option to that, which I've done myself,
Mhm.
is because yes, I can't stand how the Trumbowyg control actually modifies what you put in there. I actually added, what do they call this? Like a security protection tag. And what I do is it's basically a fake tag that I created, a fake HTML tag. So if I start the tag and say open bracket protected close bracket,
Yeah.
and then put whatever I want in there, and then end it with open bracket / protected close bracket,
Yep. Yeah.
anything inside does not get touched. And the word protected doesn't really mean anything HTML wise, it's just ignored.
Right. Right. So in that case, then wrap it in that fake tag, and then paste it in HTML view.
Right. Well, you would go into HTML view, you would put those open close tags and then paste your text in between it. But that tag has to be defined. It's not given to
Right.
you. I created that tag. So you have to go into the configuration editor of the Trumbowyg.
Okay.
So let me see if I can pull it up on my end, and then I gotta remember where I've used it.
While you're doing that, the other nitpicky thing about Trumbowyg is it shows the list as a button group, unordered list, ordered list, but unless I'm missing something, you don't see the button for the unordered list, ordered list. It's supposed to be right before the horizontal rule, but it's not there.
I believe it shows up as a drop down, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I've got the drop down for a line left, center, right, and then the next button group should be the list, ordered and unordered, but the next thing that I see on mine is the insert horizontal rule. I don't see the next one in the sequence. I'm going to what? Why would I show you? Yeah, Patrick.
yeah, I was gonna say it may be that it, in my default settings for the Trumbowyg, I don't see that that's included. But you could probably add it. But so yeah, show what you're seeing and
Sure. Bear with me. Okay, so here's the Trumbowyg, list button group. This is kind of the default setup, and it should be right after justify and right before horizontal rule. Go to the actual form. Here's your justify. Here's your horizontal rule, and you got nothing between there. I have, just as an aside, I have added the new parameter down low chosen the icon for, in this case, ordered list, I think it was. Just, pick an icon. You do ordered list, then,
The name is list, not button group lists. You
okay,
see,
so
wait,
that's,
stop right. You see where it says button groups? You have lists and then you're
Yeah.
using value of those two items.
okay.
Isn't that your definition? You've defined it, or it has defined it by default as lists.
Well, you may be correct. This is a default edit. I just put this editor in place, literally 5 minutes
Mhm.
before the meeting. So you may be completely correct. I did play around with it and ended up kind of breaking something. Hey, no, there's my align, there's my insert, and no button, no list. So go back here. Make sure.
This is, wait a minute. I think I remember. This is bringing back a memory. Hold on. I gotta look. I gotta look.
Come on, you don't have total recall. What's wrong with you? But if I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, I can make it work, but it seems like this button group thing might not be working all as expected.
You basically, I think you nailed it. That button groups, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, I think is defunct. I don't think it works. You have to put it in the button drop down. Because if I remember correctly, that's how I got it to work myself.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So I was kind of trying to figure out, A, am I doing something wrong? B, do I understand what this button group is supposed to do? And then C, everything else.
Yeah,
So
it's not defined correctly in when you first create it and drop it into the page.
Yeah.
Like I said, that button groups section, apparently it doesn't do anything. It doesn't work. I think it's been replaced by button drop downs because when you put it in there, as you've shown, it works.
Yeah.
And I've done that same exact thing. I've moved the lists down into that area and then use that, and then that worked.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now back to the paragraph. That's the real kicker. Let me just see it. Okay.
So I will have to backtrack what I said because while it is partially correct, it is not completely correct.
Okay.
Those tokens to protect text
Yeah.
was actually for the DNN text editor, not the Trumbowyg.
Okay.
So when you use the built-in DNN text editor, you have that ability where you can define your own protected tags, and then anything found within those tags aren't touched. But it doesn't look like, or at least I don't know of a way to do that on the Trumbowyg one yet. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I apologize. I dropped away a little bit, internet issues. Do I understand the summary of the problem? Trumbowyg doesn't show the ability to deal with unordered and ordered lists by default.
Yes, that is correct. You have it, it's in the configuration for a default editor. When you just add that field, it's in their default, but it does not display and therefore it doesn't work. However, what I was able to do was take and add it essentially manually in the button drop downs. I created, chose the unordered list icon, gave it a name of list, then copied, pasted the unordered list, ordered list in the drop down, saved it, and that works. I just wasn't sure if I was doing something incorrectly or there was some other trick I wasn't aware of. But that was a secondary problem. The primary problem is that, at least as far as I can tell, the Trumbowyg editor wraps plain text always in a paragraph, and typically that's fine. But in this instance, it is kind of breaking some HTML where I'm displaying it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And Mark's posted an article on the text that might, on the chat, that might be of use on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some people with some workarounds in there. They say they're
Oh.
kind of messy, but it's working for some people. And I wonder, Matt, can you run your content that the P is, including the P, can you run that through a workflow and strip the P back out?
I suppose I
Paragraph
could
tag?
do that. Yeah, I probably could do that. Yeah,
So-
that's a good workaround.
Yeah, and to that end, I've dealt with this before on a support ticket long ago, and one of the problems is that it's not necessarily that the entire text will be inside of a P tag, that there might be a couple of different ones. So
Multiple ones.
it's not that you can just take it off the front and the back and you're done.
But maybe you could set a marker that begins at the beginning of each of your paragraphs. Then you could, in the workflow, you could search for the marker, remove the tag, something like that.
Kind of a hybrid of what Ben was suggesting. Wrap it in some marker tag.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that marker tag, just warning, would only work if the Trumbowyg doesn't also mutilate that one. Because
Mutilate's a good
what might happen is, like, if you do create your own like little marker tag, what if
Yeah.
it wraps the marker tag in P tags?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with doing stuff like that, because when you're talking about an editor that is literally going in there and modifying what you put in, you can't
Mhm.
necessarily guarantee that what you put in is what you're going to find. So you're going to have to test that out.
Yeah. I tried to do the tags to remove option and put the P tag in there, and it did a great job of removing the P tag along with all the text between the opening and closing paragraph, which is probably not what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got to test that more. That actually may do the job, but I haven't had a chance yet to dive into that deeper. Well, thank you all.
All right. Anything else?
I have something quick, I hope. I have a one-to-many situation, and you know how when you initialize that, you get a set of tabs where the list that's associated with the record is in a second tab. And Patrick showed me a technique where instead of that being in a second tab, that it shows up in your form as a drop down with checkboxes. When he showed it to me, I took a screenshot of it to remind myself of it, and then in a cleanup frenzy, I deleted it. So I've lost that reference. Was wondering it might help other people as well, instead of having to make people jump over to another tab and add items. This drop down with checkboxes was a really nice solution. It had to do with lessons and topics, I think. Patrick, do you recall?
I'm trying to remember. So can you just give the context one more time? It's you.
Yeah, you have a one-to-many situation. I have a system where I'm doing jobs. By the way, that launched the other day.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and instead of going, yes. So
And
yeah,
there's cities involved for the jobs. They can be in multiple cities, and so
Right.
I had a list. So you had I think it was lessons and topics or something was the solution you already had, and you had an example of how you put your topics in a drop down with checkboxes, and people could just check which topic was important for them. That's what I'm looking for, is that example and how how that?
Yeah, so
how it's done?
the basic idea there is that you yeah, you could, so you put your, you do a drop down with checkboxes, and you can query the available items that you need, that you need to check, and then that you can execute action. You can create a list from that list. Create a list from the drop down, and then execute actions on that list in your button, and it will and then in the execute actions, you're running the in that case that we were talking about, add topic to lesson. You're running that action from that plant and app action. You run that action for each item that comes from that drop down with checkboxes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
By extension, would that, if you were trying to update the record and you had already chosen some of the items, like in this case, chose several cities, can that drop down appear in an update as some of the items are checked? Is it purely to add items? That's ultimately what we'd
Right,
want.
yeah.
Is that if they see the list of cities, they would want to see the ones they've already checked, or they already have included as.
Yeah,
as being
and
checked.
also if they, I assume that the next part of this question is if they deselect one of them.
Exactly.
Then
Exactly.
yeah, and I have implemented something like that, yes, and that gets a little bit more complex, because you have to. In that situation, you have to keep a record of which ones were selected initially when the form loaded, and then you have to do a comparison. When your button runs, you can do a comparison, and I can't remember exactly how I did. I would need to find the instance where I did this, but basically the idea is that you do a comparison of which ones were selected when you loaded and which ones are selected now, and then you can figure out which ones are new, need to be added, and which ones are have been removed and need to be deleted. And you do that, and all those things happen on the button when you click the button.
Right.
Has anybody else implemented something along those lines? I guess that's a no. If I can, yeah. So go ahead.
From a database impact perspective, would it be just as easy, or is there a downside to when you're about to process that record after they click this the update button, to just go in and delete all of the many-to-many table entries for this record, and then take what
If it
was
doesn't
checked
matter
and go
to
and
you,
add that in? Does it
yeah,
matter
like
what they do?
if the if the IDs and that sort of thing don't matter to you. I think in my instance it was important for me to I forget exactly the scenario. I'm trying to remember even which site I did it on, but if it doesn't matter to you, yes, you could certainly delete all the associations and then just update with the new associations. You could do that. That's a simpler approach. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. As long as there's no impact to it that I can't picture. I don't know. Just more database hits, but I don't think that's a big deal at this point.
So
cool.
Interesting problem. I think another way to deal with this would be to if you put an automation job in that responds to the database, the adds and deletes, that you could do the handling in the button to add or delete things, and then let the automation handle the subsequent code, the other things that need to happen when something is added or deleted. I'm not sure if that gets you there or not, but
I will have to go and dig through that and try to recreate it. Luckily, they're accepting of the tabbed approach.
Okay.
But I just like the technique that Patrick showed me, and it's cleaner. It's a one step. It's faster for the individual adding or editing the job to do it that way than it is, and it's more intuitive. after they hit add to add the job, you're telling them, oh, wait a minute, you didn't put cities in, you know, with the tabbed approach. That's the effect of the way that it's laid out now. Cool, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to hit a couple of slides here. A couple of weeks ago, we mentioned our Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We'll still honor this through December. So if you have or know somebody that needs a proof of concept, we'll do it at a discounted rate. So let us know if that's something that's of interest. We've been talking about beta for the new version 1.24. I mentioned on Wednesday that we were probably going to start the beta period. I think it was the 12th, but nope, 16th, I think. Now I'm making these dates up in my head. Calendar. Yeah, I think we were talking about doing it the 12th. And at the moment, I think the thinking is that it might be an extended beta period, which is something that that we've talked about in this group before as more preferable, that it might go on and we might actually not release until after Christmas. So it would be for an extended period. So be on the lookout for announcements about that. We have a new thing that we implemented in the last week, sponsored feature requests. So if you, and this is something that Dana and Sharp did a long time ago, it was phased out and now we're bringing it back. But when you do a feature request, there's the ability to check the box and say you'd be willing to sponsor the request. And you can also sponsor somebody else's request, but if you do that, it'll just start a dialogue with us to try and figure out the sizing and the appropriateness of it for the product, and then we'll agree to a number. And if you agree, then that'll accelerate the development on that. So do continue with your feature requests, but just know that there's another option to you to sponsor them as well. Another housekeeping thing, December 23rd and 30th, there will not be a campfire. We'll have to have our own individual private campfires, I guess, gather around the hearth at home. But no, this is holiday for Plant and App employees, US, and so we will not be there for that. On the Low Code Cafe, we also mentioned that that the Wednesday to December 21st, that's our holiday issue. So I'll just put out a plug there. That's one not to miss. There's something in there for everyone if you'll come. So, good. I didn't look, but I don't believe we have new contributions in the Campfire website. Take a look at that now. Nope, nothing since mid-November. And for feature requests, yep, so you see our new big banner here. You can sponsor something, but also when you're adding a request, there's this little checkbox down here, and it'll start the dialogue, tell you what will happen if you submit that request. I think too, there's yeah, if somebody else has done a feature and you want to sponsor it, or you think it's a great idea, there's the ability to do that as well. So lots of options there. So in terms of new feature requests, one since a week ago, the changing the product documentation to a wiki format, allowing users to contribute.
I'll go check that right now.
So anyone with any ghost stories, things that you had a hard time chasing down and had to spend extra time on? I think we kind of did one of those with Ben trying to find it, but we never could figure out what's at the root of it. So it's still an open question, spending too much time on it.
If I may, a couple things. Number one, sorry to backtrack for 1 second.
sure.
Matt, I think I found your answer.
That's important.
Do tell, do tell.
In the editing of the Trumbowyg, when you're looking at the settings under custom attributes,
Yeah.
type in semantic as the attribute name, and the
Okay.
attribute value, type in false.
Hang on.
You want to, is it easier to show that or copy paste?
Yeah. Where is it? Share screen. Oh no, can't share yet. There we go.
Interesting. Semantic is one of the so is that not working? Because it's one of the settings on the field.
Is it? Where?
Yeah, it's down below. Yeah. Oh, it's that
Oh,
first one.
oh,
But
okay.
but
So
I
maybe you could
actually tried that and I still got the P tags. So
well, yes and no, because it's a
Okay.
double thing that you need to do. So hold on 1 second. I'm
Okay.
gonna see now if I do it this way. All right, so if you do that, that's expected, but that's what needs to be done. If you put it in div is just a container. It doesn't offer any additional type of formatting. That's the quote unquote protected tag that you're going to be using, but you have to turn semantic off, because if you don't, divs will get converted to Ps.
Where is that you turn semantic off? Sorry,
It's
I missed
a
that.
yeah, it's a checkbox at the top here.
Oh no.
The first.
Yeah.
See,
Right.
it doesn't show it here, but divs are automatically converted to P tags. Now, if you don't use any tag whatsoever, it's still going to insert P tags, because text, according to the Trumbowyg, cannot just stand alone.
Mhm.
But if you use the div, open div, close div, and paste, your text inside, and semantic is turned off, then it's not going to replace those divs with P tags, which then basically means that anything you put within that div is going to retain its original design.
Okay. And so you had, thank you, first of all. So no other changes other than shut off semantic and put it inside div tags. That's it.
I mean, if you're just talking about text, yep, that's it.
Okay.
I
That is-
can't state what's going to happen in here if you have other HTML in there, but if it's just straight text, this is your resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I've got to play with that because yeah, it's going to be a mix of things, but that was one for the majority of what I'm doing. It's straight text. But that's a good running start. Thank you very much.
You're very
Also,
welcome.
while I'm in the business of thanking you, Ben, I'd like to say thank you for, this is going back a while, outputting a very large JSON from SQL. You may not even recall this. You came up with a method you created a variable right at the very last step, and then inserted all of the JSON into that variable. And that bypassed the limitation when you output raw in an API call. Output raw truncates at 2,000 or so characters. With this approach, because it's in a large nvarchar variable, it goes through regardless of the size. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome.
On a side note, I do have that ghost story that you were talking about, Dale. I I actually did find a resolution late yesterday. So there was actually kind of two ghost stories, although the second one I don't think many people would probably end up hitting. But the first one was a situation where I was submitting a form. It was using a large text area. That large text area had SQL code. So I'm just basically I've written a system that as an admin, I can upload scripts, table creation, stored procedure creation, things like that, store it into the database because that information is later used to create other databases. So I read those scripts and then I just execute them. Before worked perfectly fine. All of a sudden, I can't submit. Every time I hit the submit, the little button would say, please wait. And that's it. It wouldn't go any further. All I could see from my end was connection reset on the browser side. Working with the developers at Plantain App, they went a little bit further. They kind of figured out that the request was being sent from the browser, but it was never being received by the server. So somewhere in the middle, it was being stopped. So at that point, the idea was there must be a firewall, which of course then, light bulb went off and I said, oh, here we go again with our firewall. The bane of my existence, at least when it comes to web stuff. Apparently, yeah, our firewall was modified at some point because this data, I have 16 scripts that are already in the database. So it's obvious that this method worked previously. I was able to get this information through the firewall before because it's in there. But now the firewall is preventing it for SQL injection. It's seeing it as a potential threat to SQL injection and blocking it. So now I can no longer submit that data because the firewall is preventing it. So anyone else that by chance you're working on a form, you click on submit, you get stuck with the please wait button, nothing's happening. You look at your console and what you see is a connection reset. Before you drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what you did wrong with your code and whatnot, if you have a firewall, check to see if the firewall is preventing that postback. Because the firewall is not going to give you feedback as to the reason why the firewall blocked it. It's just going to say no, and you're going to get that connection reset error. You're going to have to go to the firewall for that date timestamp, and you're going to have to look to see in those logs to see if it blocked it. So don't do what I did and spend basically 4 or 5 days trying to figure out what the heck you did wrong, when in reality you didn't do anything wrong and it was something else that's actually interfering in the process. So that was my first ghost story. My second one has to do with Active Directory. This is the one that I don't think many people are probably ever going to deal with, but we have a situation here where we had several local Active Directory domain controllers. And one of my sites is now using a third-party DNN module that we purchased that can interface with Active Directory and use that for user validation. The reason we do that is because these particular users have several other websites that use the same exact domain user organization. So it just made it easier for them to have all one username and password for single sign-on. Now, that being said, it worked beautifully for over a year. All of a sudden, we were getting a situation where I had a script running in SQL that pulled a lot of information out of Active Directory and displayed it on screen for certain users here. The script used to run in 10 seconds or just under. Never had a problem. All of a sudden, it went from 10 seconds to over a minute. And because the information was being displayed on Action Grid, it was timing out because Action Grid has a hard-coded limit of 30 seconds. So in trying to figure out what was going on, I narrowed it down to the fact that it was Active Directory. Apparently, looking further, the networking people here added additional servers offsite. So we have now additional Active Directory domain controllers that are not local here. Whatever they're using with the offsite connection is slow. So when the primary domain controller goes to load balance requests, if the requests are then sent to our offsite locations, the response time compounds because this is many, many requests that are going through. For example, over 300, it compounds so far that we are looking at over a 600% increase in the time it takes to complete, you know, going from 10 seconds to over a minute. So if anyone is working with Active Directory and you're not the one in control of it, be sure you let your people know that if they ever add additional controllers, especially if they're not local and they're remote, you need to be aware of it because it could potentially cause issues down the line, especially if you're using something like Action Grid that has a 30-second limitation on it. Just a food for thought warning.
It's interesting that both of those are things that are outside your control, right? We always
Yep.
think in terms of cause and effect, and I did, you know, it was working and it's not working, and I know I didn't change anything, and those are very frustrating.
It happens, unfortunately here, it happens quite often because things that I've written, I'm like, wait, this worked. I haven't gone in there, haven't changed the code in like, you know, a year and a half. Like why all of a sudden did it stop working? And sure enough, I would probably hazard to guess between 75 to 85% of the time, it's because there was a change outside of my control that I was never, you know, privy to or warned about. And all of a sudden then it becomes my responsibility to work around it. But yeah, just again, you know, these are live and learn moments for me. So, you know, moving forward now, I know when I see these certain things that I don't go crazy thinking that I was the one who messed something up. And I'm like, all right, let me check some other things first. So just kind of imparting the same wisdom to others.
Were you
Yeah,
ever
that's-
able to get, the database scripts working again?
You mean the first one with the firewall?
Mhm.
No. They flat out have refused to fix whatever it is that they changed. They're not willing to make any exceptions. So at this point in time, my only workaround, basically, it's cumbersome and it shouldn't be necessary, but I have to RDP to my server directly, to the web server, and then do the same thing I was doing, but do it directly on the web server. Because if it's local to itself, it doesn't need to touch the firewall. It stays local to the same server. So at that point, I bypass that whole security portion and I could do what I need to do. This is part of the reason why I was asking if there was a way to see if when you're on the local or your browser is on the same server or remotely, because what I would like to do is when I hit the submit button, or better yet, when I pull a form up, if the system can detect that you're on the local machine, it lets the form load. And if it detects that you're not on the local machine, you're remotely, display a message that says, this feature requires that you be logged into the local server to function. That way, you know, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, whatever, when I go to do this again, I'll forget that I have to be on the local machine, have the thing remind me that this can't be done remotely because of the way our firewall is set up. It kind of bugs me because, you know, there are a lot of other websites. I mean, you look at all these message boards. You know, we post code all the time. You know they have to have firewalls. There's got to be a way to set it up so that it can detect the difference between code that's being transmitted as text for storage and code that's being transmitted for execution. But they're not differentiating that on our end, and they're just saying if they see code, period, that's it. They block it.
In terms of alternate solutions, is there some way to encrypt or make it look like it's not code.
I thought about that, but the problem is that because it's at the time of submit, that information has to be posted back to the server to then be manipulated to encrypt it.
Mhm,
It's the post back that's going to get blocked
mhm.
because initially you can't encrypt it on the client side before submit. The submit button itself is going to initiate an immediate post back with whatever text is in that text box. And that's what's getting blocked. If there was a way to encrypt that and obfuscate that data prior
Yep.
to the submit button action, then yes, I could be able to do it at the client side, transmit over some, obfuscated data and then unencrypt it on the server side and then store it. But unfortunately, there's really no way to do that prior that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I suspect some JavaScript guys could do that, and so instead of submitting the field, you'd submit a secondary field where changes to your primary field get reflected and obfuscated into a secondary field, right?
You wouldn't be able to use a secondary field. It would have to replace the primary field, because if you don't replace it, then that text is still going to go out in the submit because
Yeah,
it's a field.
I'm saying
You see what I'm saying? Like if you have a secondary field, then you'll be transmitting both. You'll be transmitting the original
yeah,
code
and
and the obfuscated version.
yeah, I was thinking that with the field not being using the field options to not save it, but it's not saved to reports, but it's still transmitting.
So I have a question. Do you know specifically what's triggering the firewall action? Is there?
There are, I'm sorry, can I put you guys on hold for 1 second? Something coming in.
All right. While he's working on that, I'm going to
Never mind. Sorry. No, it was my son's school was calling my desk, so I just had to pick up, but it was an automated message. According to them, there's a whole slew of things. It's like select, drop table, any number of things, like all the types of things that you would find in a normal SQL script.
Okay.
Any of that stuff is found, they block it as potential SQL injection. So basically, anytime their firewall detects any SQL code, for the most part, it's just going to block it. It's not going to allow the transmission of SQL code. SQL code needs to run on the back end of the firewall. It can't be transmitted through the firewall.
Okay, with that, I'm going to call that a full edition of the Low Code Campfire. Stick around with us for a few minutes after the call, and we will have our unrecorded afterglow segment. Thank you all.